The 9th of April, 1940. Under the code name Operation Reshape, Nazi Germany invades Denmark and Norway. Strategically, Denmark is important to Germany as a staging area for operations in Norway, where Germany seeks to secure naval bases for use against the British fleet in the North Sea and to ensure vital iron ore shipments from neutral Sweden. While the invasion of Denmark lasts less than 6 hours, making it the shortest German military campaign of the war, Norway surrenders after 2 months on the 10th of June, 1940. King Haakon VII and the Norwegian government escape to London, and Vidkun Quisling, a Norwegian politician and Nazi collaborator, proclaims himself Prime Minister. However, the country is not ruled by Quisling's puppet government, but by a man who in the years to come will establish in Norway multiple concentration camps, ruthlessly persecute the Jewish population, focus on crushing the Norwegian resistance movement, and order massacres of prisoners as well as the civilian population. His name is Josef Terboven. Josef Antonius Heinrich Terboven, the son of Catholic parents, was born on the 23rd of May, 1898 in the city of Essen, then part of the German Empire. In 1915, Terboven volunteered for military service in the First World War, which had begun on the 28th of July, 1914. He initially served in the field artillery and then in the nascent Air Force. For his service he was awarded both classes of the Iron Cross and entered the war as a lieutenant, which was equivalent to a second lieutenant. After the war, he studied law and political science at the universities of Munich and University of Freiburg. But after his father died in the winter of 1920 to 1921, presumably for financial reasons, he interrupted his studies and did not graduate. In November 1923, Terboven joined the Nazi Party with membership number 25,247. The same month, he participated in the Munich Beer Hall Putsch, which was the failed coup attempt during which Adolf Hitler led a coalition group in an attempt to overthrow the German government. At this time, Terboven worked as an apprentice at a bank, but he was laid off in June 1925 due to staff cutbacks. This set the stage for an active career in the Nazi Party, for which he went to work full-time from August 1925, becoming the head of a small Nazi newspaper and book distributorship in Essen. He also founded the local Nazi Party organization and joined the SA, the Nazi paramilitary organization, becoming its leader in Essen. In 1928, he became Gauleiter, or regional Nazi Party leader of Essen Regional District. In September 1930, he was elected as a representative of the Nazi Party in the Reichstag, the German parliament, and less than 2.5 years later, on the 30th of January 1933, Adolf Hitler was appointed Chancellor of Germany by President Paul von Hindenburg. On the 28th of June 1934, Terboven married Ilse Stahl, Nazi propaganda minister Joseph Goebbels' former secretary and mistress. Goebbels and Adolf Hitler were witnesses at the wedding, and while in Essen, put into play preparations for the Night of the Long Knives, which occurred between the 30th of June and 2nd of July 1934. During this purge, the SS assassinated many members of the rival SA, including its leader, Ernst Röhm, effectively ending their political and military power. On the 5th of February 1935, Josef Terboven was appointed Oberpräsident, or High President of Prussia's Rhine province, which included Gau, or Administrative Division Essen, and 3 other administrative divisions. He thus united under his control the highest party and governmental offices within his jurisdiction. Terboven was known as a man who did not shy away from conflict. He also possessed the ability to carry things through to the point of ruthlessness, which earned him a reputation as a petty and ruthless ruler of the area. The Second World War began on the 1st of September 1939, when Nazi Germany invaded Poland. The German invasion of Norway began on the 9th of April 1940, and 15 days later, Terboven was named Reichskommissar for Norway. This happened before the military invasion's completion on the 10th of June. In September 1940, he moved to Skaugum, the official residence of Crown Prince Olav, and made his headquarters in the Norwegian Parliament building in Oslo. Nothing in Terboven's background and training particularly qualified him for that post, but he had Hitler's full confidence. He was responsible to no one but his Führer, and within the Nazi governmental hierarchy, his office stood on the same level as the Reich ministries. Terboven virtually regarded himself as an autonomous viceroy, with what he termed limitless power of command. His conception of his role resulted in his attempting to ignore any directives not issued by Hitler himself. Terboven had supervisory authority over only the German civilian administration, which was very small and did not rule Norway directly. Day-to-day governmental affairs were managed by the existing 7-member Norwegian Administrative Council, which had been set up by the Norwegian Supreme Court after the king and cabinet fled into exile. However, on the 25th of September 1940, Terboven dismissed the Administrative Council and appointed a 13-member Provisional State Council to administer affairs. All the members were Terboven's hand-picked appointees and worked under his control and supervision. A proclamation was issued deposing King Haakon VII, outlawing the government in exile, disbanding the Storting, the Norwegian parliament, and banning all political parties except Vidkun Quisling's National Samling. He considered Quisling to be of little use, but had to accept him as Hitler insisted on giving Quisling a political role in occupied Norway. As a result, on the 1st of February 1942, Terboven permitted the formation of the so-called Quisling government, a Norwegian puppet regime under Quisling as minister-president. In fact, however, Terboven was still the undisputed dictator of the country, in which he behaved like a king. His stubbornness earned him enemies, and he was perceived by many as an arrogant and fanatical leader who believed the end justified the use of all kinds of ruthless means. Terboven was the highest-ranking German civilian official in Norway, and in his role was responsible for gross abuses against the Norwegian civilian population. Terboven established multiple concentration camps in Norway, including Falstad concentration camp near Levanger and Bredtvet concentration camp in Oslo in late 1941. One of the most notorious concentration camps during World War II in Norway was located in the village of Beisfjord. This was a concentration camp for Yugoslav, mostly Serb prisoners of war, and later for Soviet prisoners of war. The Yugoslavs consisted of about 900 men, 88 of whom were between 14 and 18 years of age. On the night of the 17th of July 1942, 287 prisoners were killed because the guards suspected they had typhus. Whether the prisoners had typhus was never properly diagnosed. Fearing that this typhus would spread to guards and local inhabitants, the order was given by Josef Terboven that the prisoners were to be killed. In groups of 20, the prisoners were led to newly dug ditches and shot by machine guns from a nearby barracks rooftop and guard tower. Those who did not die immediately were shot by handgun. A group of prisoners barricaded themselves in one of the sick barracks and refused to come out. The prison guards then set fire to the barracks, not risking going inside in fear of being infected. The prisoners that tried to escape through the doors and windows were shot. In all, during the 6-month stay in Beisfjord, about 83%, over 700 prisoners of the Yugoslavs died, and the remaining prisoners were transferred out in October 1942. Another massacre occurred in July 1942, after at least one German guard assigned to the Korgen prison camp was killed. In retribution, the camp commandant ordered the execution by gunfire of 39 prisoners at Korgen and 20 at Usen concentration camp. This, however, did not satisfy Josef Terboven, who ordered another retribution, and in the days that followed, around 400 prisoners were shot and killed in various camps. Because Hitler was nervous that the Allied invasion would come to Norway and demanded absolute peace in the area, from 1941 Terboven increasingly focused on crushing the Norwegian resistance movement, which engaged in acts of sabotage and assassination against the Germans. On the 17th of September, Terboven decreed that special SS and police tribunals would have jurisdiction over Norwegian citizens who violated his decrees. They were summary proceedings, with the accused provided with no adequate defense. The trials were not open to the public, and the proceedings were not published. Sentences were carried out shortly after they were pronounced, with no right of appeal. It is estimated that some 150 individuals were sentenced to death by these tribunals. Many more were sentenced to long terms of hard labor. On the 26th of April, 1942, the Nazis learned that 2 members of the resistance were being sheltered by the inhabitants of Telavåg, a small fishing village. When the Gestapo arrived, shots were exchanged, and 2 Gestapo agents were killed. Terboven was outraged and personally led a reprisal raid on the 30th of April that was quick and brutal. On that day, as the villagers were watching, all buildings were destroyed, all boats were sunk or confiscated, and all livestock taken away. All men in the village were either executed or sent to the Sachsenhausen concentration camp in Germany. Of the 72 who were deported from Telavåg, 31 were murdered in captivity. The women and the children were imprisoned for 2 years. Another 18 Norwegian prisoners unrelated to Telavåg, who were held at the Trondheim internment camp, were also executed as reprisals. Though smaller in scale, this atrocity is often compared to similar events at Lidice in the Czech Republic and Oradour-sur-Glane in France. In another incident, the shooting of 2 German police officials on the 6th of September 1942 led to Terboven personally declaring martial law in Trondheim from the 5th to 12th of October 1942. He imposed a curfew from 8 p.m. to 5 a.m. and suppressed all newspapers, public assemblies, and railroad transportation. On Terboven's orders, 10 prominent citizens were executed in reprisal, and their assets were confiscated. In addition, Terboven set up an ad hoc extrajudicial tribunal to try Norwegians considered hostile to the state. An additional 24 men were tried and summarily executed over the next 3 days. Despite the small number of Jews in Norway's population, Terboven persecuted them relentlessly. There were approximately 2,100 Jews in Norway at the time of the German invasion, including about 350 mostly German and Austrian Jewish refugees who had found safe haven there in the 1930s. Between 1940 and 1945, approximately 770 Jews were deported from Norway, and most of them were murdered in Auschwitz. Only 34 Norwegian Jews, all men, ultimately did survive to see the end of the war. In Norway, Terboven commanded a personal force of around 6,000 men, of whom 800 were part of the secret police. However, he did not have authority over the 400,000 regular German army forces that were stationed in Norway and were under the command of Generaloberst Nikolaus von Falkenhorst. In contrast to the military forces commanded by Falkenhorst, which aimed to reach an understanding with the Norwegian people, and were under orders by Falkenhorst to treat Norwegians with courtesy, Terboven behaved in a petty and ruthless way and was widely disliked not only by the Norwegians, but also by many Germans. Josef Goebbels expressed annoyance in his diaries about what he called Terboven's bullying tactics against the Norwegians, as they alienated the population against the Germans. Terboven's relations with the army commander were strained, but his relations with the higher SS and police leader Wilhelm Redis were very good. In October 1944, in response to the Red Army advance into the Finnmark region of northern Norway, Terboven instituted a scorched earth policy that resulted in the forced evacuation of 50,000 Norwegians and widespread destruction, including the burning of 10,000 homes, 4,700 farms, and hundreds of schools, churches, shops, and industrial buildings. As the tide of the war turned against Germany, Terboven's personal aspiration was to organize Fortress Norway for the Nazi regime's last stand. However, after Hitler's suicide, his successor Grand Admiral Karl Dönitz summoned Terboven to his headquarters in German Flensburg on the 3rd of May 1945 and ordered him to cooperate with the winding down hostilities. When Terboven expressed his desire to continue fighting, Dönitz dismissed Terboven from his post as Reichskommissar on the 7th of May 1945 and transferred his powers to General Franz Böhmer. With the announcement of Germany's surrender, the 46-year-old Terboven committed suicide on the 8th of May 1945 at 11:30 p.m., half an hour before the German surrender took effect in Norway. Terboven's wife Ilse and their mentally unstable daughter Inge survived the war and lived in West Germany. In 1964, to punish her husband, Inge killed her 2-year-old daughter by strangulation. 2 psychiatrists agreed that she had not been in her right mind when the murder took place, and she was sentenced to 2 years and 6 months in prison for intentional murder. Terboven's wife Ilse died in 1972. There were no tears shed for Josef Terboven.
Thanks for watching the World History Channel. Be sure to like and subscribe, and click the bell notification icon so you don't miss our next episodes. We thank you, and we'll see you next time on the channel.